Hey everybody, it's Greg Luff, and listen, I want to welcome you to our Reading Aggression Right course. Now, for some of you watching this may be a supplemental course. You've taken our Off the X training, you've taken our Personal versus Professional Tactical Communication course, or for some of you, maybe this is the first time that you're seeing us or you're doing any type of training with us. It's a great standalone course, it's a great supplemental course, and it is on the proper way to read aggression, specifically geared towards the workplace. Now, of course, when we're talking about aggression and violence and bullying and tormenting, we could be talking about you as professionals working with customers, patients, clients. But of course, we know that communication, violence, aggression, bullying, tormenting, all of that stuff, it expands beyond just our work environments. It's going to carry over into our lives when we are at play, when we are out with our kids at sporting events, when we're just out having fun socially. It is all over the place, so this information is going to help you in all settings, although I am gearing it towards specifically the workplace. Now, reading aggression, why do we need to understand and be able to read aggression? I think one of the first points that I want to share with you is that aggression can actually be measured. And that's an important concept for us to understand. You see, aggression always progresses in a linear fashion. I mean, of course, it can de-escalate as well, but it always progresses in a linear fashion. And I think another thing that's really important to start off with is that every single one of us, we exist on a continuum. And they call that the aggression continuum. So we all have it. I mean, we all know that we are prone to stress and anxiety and the pressures of work and life and all kinds of stuff, and you might not be feeling great and all these different things. And what happens is when we are under the influence of these negative feelings, thoughts, and emotions, we've all had times when we are upset, when anger or frustration or whatever it is, and that gets the better of us, and that dictates kind of how we're interacting, responding, reacting to the people around us. So we all experience this and we all express this at times. Well, it is kind of an interesting thing to ask ourselves where we exist within this continuum of aggression. You see, if we understand that aggression can actually be measured and that aggression aggression always will escalate or move up in a linear fashion. Okay, actually, matter of fact, let me show you an illustration that we use. This actually simple illustration of kind of like a thermometer is a way that we can kind of view an aggression continuum. Okay, so if we look at this, we start at the bottom and we have what's called just a trigger phase. And then from the trigger phase, we're going to move up into something called this escalation phase. And then you see at the very top, we have something called the crisis phase. Well, if you think of this as the continuum, you think of this as aggression. Okay, what starts down nice and low is the trigger phase. And so what is that? The trigger phase is the stuff that we all experience. It is your daily, weekly stress that just occurs. So, for example, your alarm clock goes off, you wake up in the morning, you get out of bed, boom, you stub your toe first thing. You get to the bathroom, you go to brush your teeth, there's no toothpaste. You come downstairs, you realize you've got no milk, you've got no eggs, so your breakfast is messed up, you're running late, you get outside, you realize you left a light on your car, you're having a bad day. Now you got to wait for somebody to give you a boost or whatever it is. You roll into work, you're an hour late at work, everybody's upset, you had a busy day, you missed a meeting. It doesn't make a difference, right? We all understand that whether it's work, whether it's relationships, whether it's just life in general, there's pressure, there's stress, there's anxiety that comes with that. That is the normal day-to-day stuff, the weekly stuff, the monthly stuff, the yearly stuff. And what ends up happening is you will feel yourself at times becoming somewhat filled up or maybe even potentially overwhelmed. I like to use the term, you are under the influence of all of that stuff, and so that is mild trigger phase escalation. So you start to escalate up. Now, if we leave this for a second and we say, okay, well, we're not here to talk about our level of aggression, we're here because we have a problem. In our places of business, in our interactions as professionals in the workplace with our clients, customers, patients, they are coming in and they are under the influence. We are there to serve them. We genuinely have a passion and a purpose in our careers, in our chosen professions, in our businesses, and we are there to serve people. However, a lot of people, or at least some of the people that are coming in and interacting with yourself, with your staff, your representatives, with your business, those individuals are under the influence. And they also are somewhere on this aggression continuum, and therein lies our problem. You see, we can only control one thing, and that's us. So we can learn to regulate our aggression and make sure that we are learning to manage our stress levels and anxiety levels and aggression levels and all that type of stuff. But I want you to understand that every single person that comes into your place of business is somewhere on this continuum. Now, whether it's chronic for them and they live somewhere in escalation, or whether it's just a good person having a bad day and they're normally down here and they're up here, it doesn't make a difference. I want you to be able to understand and read the signs to know where they are at on this continuum, because that dictates how you are going and how you should interact with them. It's all about the communication. It's all about us gaining a voluntary compliance from people. It's about, as professionals in a place of business, we have standards, we have codes of conduct, we have behaviors that we need people to follow or to adhere to or to behave in certain patterns in certain ways. And so this is very, very important for us. Because this is literally the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health and well-being of everybody connected to this organization. Your patients, yours, your staff, your representatives. And I think, of course, you understand that. So the aggression continuum, what I'm going to share with you in this course, is a way for us to read this, to read those signs of escalation. Okay, so let's go one step further now. We have the trigger phase, which is, the daily stress and all that stuff that builds up. And if that gets intense enough and enough pressure and enough stress, or, we're exposed to it repeatedly enough, we're going to move into escalation. Now, the escalation is where things start to, of course, they begin to escalate. Well, where are they escalating to? We said that aggression moves in a linear progression. So it's constantly moving up. Now, people can hold at a certain point, but always understand that the survivable value for you, what you must understand and know, is that aggression will always move up. And you want to be able to track that. Why? Because right up here, we haven't really talked yet about this crisis phase. The crisis phase is the phase we want to avoid. Unfortunately, it is sometimes the phase that people will already be in when we have contact with them, when they come into your places of business. Other times, it is where they will escalate to. So one very important thing to understand with this is that the crisis phase is the place where people become physical. The crisis phase is when it really does bridge into an assault type situation. This is where somebody now has hit their breaking point. The verbal talking, the de-escalation, all of that type of stuff is no longer going to work. This is an imminent danger for us. Now, fortunately for a great many of you watching this, this crisis phase, this physical threat, may not be something that you experience a whole lot within your professional world. For example, we can look at doctor's office, and almost every doctor's office that you go into now, they have a sign up saying that they will not tolerate any rude, inappropriate, abusive, aggressive behavior towards any member of their staff. Now, why do we need that in all these doctor's offices? It's not one or two. It's almost every single doctor's office. Matter of fact, I see it at my dentist's office. I see it at you see it in your accountant's office. You're pretty much seeing it in every professional building everywhere. You're seeing this. Why? Because a great many of these professions have people come in that are somewhere from very high trigger phase escalation up to about this mid-level of escalation, which means people come in and they are rude, they are inappropriate, they are aggressive. Okay, they have very little patience. They have very high demands that somehow their treatment or what their expectations that should exceed the needs of everybody else around them. There's all of these different things that we're dealing with, and these are very difficult things for you as a professional, for your staff to deal with. They're not simple things. And I want you to understand that although your business and your interactions may exist primarily within the mid-level of escalation, understand that at any point, and in rare situations for you, that aggression can escalate up. And I want you to understand that the higher it goes, the closer you come to this crisis phase. This phase where you now have a very, very serious problem. You have an imminent danger problem. Now, for some professions, this is what they're dealing with. So just by example, we talked about the doctors, And now with a certain pressure or an opiate crisis that's going on, a lot of doctors are really, making sure that, and this is the way it's always been for doctors, but, they'll have a lot of people coming in there seeking prescriptions for certain types of medications that they would then use improperly, abuse, sell, whatever it is. So doctors have to be very careful and make sure they're very thorough and all that type of stuff. And so you have a patient that comes in that is very aggressive and demanding of a doctor and wants a prescription to be filled. Now, if that doctor in that doctor's office, now they say no and they reject that prescription, they won't fill it, they won't write it, whatever the case may be, that person can become very upset. But more often than not, that individual will leave. And why they will leave is because the doctor doesn't actually have on premises what they're looking for. They don't actually have the drug there. They can just write the prescription that would then get them the drug. However, this individual now moves over to a pharmacy. And for all our pharmacists out there, you understand that if you get somebody coming in that is a drug seeker, when they come in, there's two things that make this slightly different. One, they now have already had a certain amount of failure in working to obtain a legitimate legal prescription. So maybe they forged it, maybe they finally went until they found a doctor that they could, verbally or physically kind of coerce into it, whatever it is. But they come back in now, whether they have the prescription or not, or whether they just want you to they're trying to force the pharmacist to refill an old prescription. Okay, what happens is they're already higher up on the escalation. They're coming in a completely different place. They're under the influence at a completely different level, and a couple things make this potentially more dangerous. And this is why understanding the signs of aggression are so important. You see, that person comes in and they know that the drugs, what they want, are on premises. They know that more than likely they have them there. So now a pharmacist may be dealing with somebody who's at a much higher level of escalation, and when they're told no, when they don't get the interaction or the responses that they're looking for, that escalation can very quickly become something physical where the person decides to try to rob or take by force what that pharmacy has. So all I'm trying to do is I want to paint a picture for you. And I think we all understand this, but I want you to know that there is actually a continuum from low trigger phase to escalation phase to crisis phase. And people will move up and down this continuum of aggression. And you say, well, listen, all of this makes complete sense to me, I understand that, but again, what are we here to do today? What's the value that I need to pull out of this course today? What I want you to have is the understanding of how aggression works. It will always escalate in a linear fashion, which is good for us because that means that we can actually track different points. Because when you're dealing with somebody way up here, then there's a lot of indicators that would tell you that talking to this individual is no longer going to work. It is going to be almost impossible to de-escalate that person. Somebody down here is giving off slightly different signals and cues, and if we can read and understand those, then we can take different actions to be able to verbally dissuade that person and help them to de-escalate, to help them to reduce their anxiety and their aggression and violence. And if we can do that, then at the end of the day, we succeed. So the aggression continuum is the most important thing to understand first and foremost, that it exists and that individuals are going to move up and down this in a linear fashion. And the second thing is, I want you to actually understand the cues. There are three different areas where these different cues that people will give off to you subconsciously, their body, their physiology, their behavior pattern, all of these things are going to give you indicators. And if you understand those indicators, then you will know where you are at, where they are at on the continuum. And this is what allows us to make those decisions for what course of action we should take. Should we continue to discuss and talk to this person, trying to influence them? Or should we step back, remove ourselves from this situation? Should we contact the authorities? Should we ask this person to leave outright? What do we need to do? This is the information that will allow you to make that decision. Okay, so I believe that we're all on the same page for that. Let me reach over, grab this. I'm going to erase this for a second here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down what our three areas are.